Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's my pleasure to introduce Marcia today. Marcia Proctor is a home-based travel consultant in Burford, Ontario, working with the travel agent next door for over a decade. She specializes in solo and senior travel with a particular focus on Europe. So we'll turn it over to Marcia this morning, and thanks for coming.
Well, thank you. And good morning, everyone. As it probably comes as no surprise that I love to travel, and I do a lot of it. Right now I'm in Calgary, although it's not exactly exotic destination, but I'm here to see my family. So it's a little earlier where I am, but I at least travel enough that I do feel more self-assured, and of course I'm in the business, so that I know that if anything goes off the rails in my travels, then I can get them back on track fairly easily. So but there are others who are not as well-seasoned travelers as I am, and I talk to a lot of people about their travels and the reasons that they don't want to travel anymore. And I think that with a few um, tips from that will allay some of your concerns. You'll be dusting off those suitcases again, and you'll be ready to travel to all those places that are still on your travel bucket list. So let's talk about what we can do to make travel a little less intimidating for you. Okay, so yeah, and so in other words, the topic today is safe, affordable, and adventurous journeys for seniors. So let's start off by looking at why seniors travel and why they don't. So I don't think that when it comes to determining why you travel, it really has anything to do with it. People will travel for various reasons, but I think it's pretty consistent through all the generations. So you want to go somewhere new, you want to explore something, you want to see something new and different. We have people who want to go somewhere that really speaks to them. Maybe they've seen a movie or read a book. And so, the number of tours that we have now based on the Outlander TV shows and books, Lord of the Rings, uh, Harry Potter, or the one that I get most often is Under the Tuscan Sun. People want to go to Europe, to Italy specifically, and re-experience that whole storyline there. So, and I'd be one of them. And so, a lot of people want to go and find one's roots. So, for instance, my sister-in-law just came back from Budapest, Hungary, where her father had grown up, and he's passed away now. And so, but she had all these pictures of when he lived there, and we ended up doing, some substantial research to find out where these places were, and then to sort of put together a walking tour so that she could basically retrace his steps from when he lived there. Here's where he lived, here's where he went to school, and so on. A lot of the buildings were still there. So, those are very meaningful trips for people, and we do like to do that. Sometimes it's just a matter of taking people to some sort of archive where they can do their own research, but this is a very popular thing to do. Sometimes the people go travel because they want to participate in a particular activity, whether that's skiing or surfing or something like that, but also to see the Olympics or some particular activity that's going on. For instance, this past summer, I did a lot of trips to Milan because North American prices were very high, but in Milan you could get to see Taylor Swift for a bargain. So people were going there. So, and of course, they want to just travel with the friends and family and make memories. And that's probably particularly true after COVID. But and of course, escaping winter is a major incentive as well. I'm out in Calgary right now, but I do think I did escape winter though, because it's warmer here in Calgary than it is in Toronto. Um, there may be some sense that the window of opportunity is closing but not just for seniors. I think after COVID, everybody feels that way, that they got cheated out of 2 years of travel. And now there's some maybe increased pressure to or desire to travel and see the places that they've always longed to see for one reason or another. So, I think that's sort of universal. But the reasons that seniors don't travel are broken down into perhaps three main categories: health, cost, and this sort of fear of the unknown. And so, what we're going to, I mean, cost is fairly consistent for everyone. Everyone has to be aware of the cost of the trip, but perhaps more so for seniors because they're on fixed incomes. But health and fear of the unknown may be, you know, come into play greater for seniors than others. I mean, when you're young, you feel, there isn't anything that can stop you. Um, so we're going to look at ways to reduce the potential impact of these factors so that, you do feel more comfortable with traveling, or at least some of you will. I mean, you can't come up with a cure-all that will make everybody hop on a plane tomorrow, but it will perhaps help allay some of your concerns. So let's talk about health-related concerns first. When you're going to take a trip, one of the important things is to look at what the physical demands of the trip are. I mean, you're not going to, climb Mount Kilimanjaro or go, see Machu Picchu if you're not up to it physically. And now what we're seeing is because there are more seniors traveling, um, some tour companies will include a graph that sort of shows the physical demands of the trip so that it'll be rated perhaps from 1 to 5. And, if you're one, even if you had mobility problems, you might be okay doing the trip there. But once it gets up to 5, then it's probably a bit strenuous unless you're in good physical shape. But, some of us are in good physical shape, not me necessarily, but, I just came back from a trip where there was an 80-year-old woman who had just gone, bungee jumping and, she does rock climbing as a hobby with her grandson and that sort of thing. So I mean, it does vary by individuals. So you'll see what the physical demands are and know whether or not you can keep up. How busy is the schedule? Sometimes it's just a lot to go all the time, and some of the bus tours can do that. It's nice to have a day off now and again. And we're seeing more tour operators becoming cognizant of that as well. So, for instance, there's one tour company that I use quite regularly for my clients that will have generally you stay in one hotel and then you do sort of it's called hub and spoke type of thing travel where you do day trips out from the hotel. So it's not like you're moving all the time. And then also you will have most days will have an excursion of some sort, but will also be optional excursions so that if you find you need a day off and or you just want to sleep in or something like that, then you don't have to go on the optional excursion. So they're looking. We're seeing that tour itineraries are changing as well to be a little bit more accommodating of different needs. Food restrictions and preferences are really hitting the forefront, and this again is not specifically for older people, but the younger travelers have some concerns about this as well. So, and we're seeing that these tour operators and cruise lines are being extra careful to ensure that they're able to accommodate food restrictions. So, and even on the airlines, you'll see that now that if you have a particular preference for your menu, then you can get that. How many people will you be traveling with? I mean, sometimes people get intimidated by, just having so many people on the trip with them. I mean, a bus tour can go up to 40, 45 people. A cruise ship can go up over 6,000. And although I've been on one of those 6,000 cruise ships, and it actually isn't as bad as you think, but yeah, it's just something that you want to ask and keep in mind. Will you have a room to yourself? My husband's passed away, so this was like initial concern of mine afterwards that, um, and I was actually kind of, really put off that you'd have to pay the single supplement and that it was like so much. I mean, I can see why business wise, but um, it was discouraging for solo travelers to want to travel and a real turnoff. So, but what we're seeing now is a recognition that the solo traveler is a really strong traveling group, and so we are seeing um, companies that will cater specifically to solo travelers, where you will get a room to yourself, you will um, um, pay no single supplement, and you will have some flexibility in the itinerary. So, for instance, I've got a group going with a company called Just You. In the fall, we're going to southern Spain, and it's all solo travelers. And so we had so much demand for it that we have taken out a private group um, uh, to go on this. And not everybody is single, but everybody wants to travel by themselves. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. We've done a few things like that, but perhaps not on that scale. So but once we did it once, the word got out, and so now there's a lot of solo travelers who are interested in taking advantage of those opportunities. And you also want to know what happens if there's a medical emergency as well. And this happened on a tour that I was accompanying I guess with three or four other people. And one of the people had an eye emergency, and the tour operator was the tour guide who was on the tour was very, very efficient. And we were in Italy. She got her immediately to a hospital in Pisa, and seen by a major specialist in eye care, and she was able to get treatment right away and then continue on the trip. Luckily, we were close to the end of the trip, so she was able to get home as well. So anyway, these are all good things to know. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about health insurance, and one of the pushbacks that we get when it comes to health insurance as a travel agent is, oh, my credit card covers that. And yeah, it's true. Your credit card does have some coverage on it, but it is important that you ask what it does cover, because my experience with credit card coverage, depending on the card, is that it covers you for certain things, but has a lot of limitations. And so you'll want to make sure that you have the coverage that you need. Um, but most travel insurance policies issued by travel insurance companies do cover two types of insurance: trip cancellation interruption and or emergency medical coverage. So trip cancellation, you cancel the trip before you go. Interruption, you're in the midst of your trip and you have to come back early for one reason or another. And then, of course, the emergency medical coverage. And if you're 60 plus, you may well have to complete a medical questionnaire that will determine the risk factor. And but it's easy, it's quick. You can do it online. The cost of the coverage will depend on your age, the condition of your health as rated by the medical questionnaire, the length of your trip, and also the cost of your trip. So, but my advice is don't leave home without it, and include it when you're costing out your budget for the trip. But shop around, we tend to use Manulife with our agency. They're not the cheapest. So you might want to get a quote from Blue Cross or CAA, something like that as well. Quotes are free, so it doesn't hurt to ask. And make sure that the coverage is the same if you're making comparisons. So excuse me just for a second. Sorry, I've had this cough. So, you'll want to know what the upper limit is for medical coverage, any other limitations that there might be on the coverage. If you want to save some money on traveler's health insurance, you can include a deductible to reduce the cost. So it can be, 800 or $1,000. So you agree to pay that first part yourself, and then the rest is through the insurance company. Sorry. But if you're still traveling regularly, you might want to consider an annual plan. And in this case, you look at sort of your average length of your trip, say it's 7 days, and the average cost. And usually there's a cap to how much that cost can be. But and then if you decide to go on say you've estimated 1 week and $5,000 or something like that, then you would be able to top it up if the trip that you're taking is longer or costs more. So you can still get additional coverage if you need it. Now, one thing that is another sort of emerging area is tour operators offering insurance. And particularly with all-inclusive vacations, if you find that you're traveling with, for instance, Sunwing, they offer a great cancellation insurance policy, where you can cancel up to 3 hours before you to take the trip, and perhaps not get a refund, but at least get, a voucher equal to excuse me, for what you paid. And but with Sunwing, different from what some of the other companies do, they do actually offer medical insurance as well, and that can end up being, quite a good savings as opposed to getting a policy through an insurance company. Of course, the policy does come from an insurance company; it's just sold through Sunwing. So, it's important to have health insurance. We can't predict. I mean, I could tell you, all these horror stories about things that have happened to people on trips. For the presentation started today, we were talking about, certain situations where you knew people who would have that happen to them. So, it's just important to have that health insurance when you're going to a foreign country. Okay, let's talk about keeping travel costs in check. And this is an area that uh, deserves some attention because I think that a lot of people get surprised when they see what a trip ends up costing them, even me sometimes. And so it's important to know what the bottom line is for what you're paying. The advertised price is really what you end up paying. There's those little tiny words that say, starting at or from, and that can really jack up the price. So so be sure you understand what is and isn't included in the price. So certainly the group tours are very good about doing this in terms of letting you know even what meals are covered and what aren't. But cruise ships are probably the where you get the most surprises. So and you can get carried away when you're on one of these trips. What the heck? I'm going. I'll never do it again. I'm gonna go and get the cabin with the balcony and all that stuff. And so it's but it's important to understand what the price of those upgrades are. So, with a cruise ship, they can be, you upgrade your cabin, then you go for there's gratuities, there's Wi-Fi, there's excursions, there's the drink package, the special dining, and so on. So it can really add up. And some of the costs are not overtly stated. I mean, they're in the fine print. So for instance, let's say you get the drink package and you think, I can drink as much as I want and it's all paid for up front. And but in the little teeny tiny print, it says, 18% gratuity is not included. And so 18% of what you spend on drinks is automatically added to your bill. And so, um, well, sometimes, often when you get that final bill at the end of the cruise, it can be quite surprising. So um, you can usually get a good estimate of what these costs are that aren't included, so that you can add those into your budget, and monitor your spending during the trip as well. So let's say you've decided that you really have to go on that excursion, and but that might mean not doing the specialty dining or whatever the next day. So um, these are things that you just have to be proactive about keeping the prices in check. Um, certainly one way to save money is to try to pay as much as you can before you leave. So those things are all covered. You paid for them in Canadian dollars. You won't have to pay an exchange rate or anything. So that's good. You can share a room rather than travel solo. That's a cost saving measure where there is a single supplement. And we have some travel companies that will find you a roommate if you don't have one to travel with. And so, for instance, G Adventures will match you up with someone of the same gender and usually around the same age, and you'll have a roommate. I'm not sure everyone would want to do that, but yeah, that is an option. If you're bringing your cell phone, look into eSIM cards rather than roam like home or whatever your cell phone provider offers, because the eSIM card can save you a fair bit of money. So, um, take public transportation or walk rather than private cars and cabs. And I, as I said, specialize in Europe, and most major cities have a subway, and it's always interesting to see how everyday people travel. So, and provided you take some precautions, I mean, you don't leave your wallet in your back pocket type of thing, and uh, you we take real measures, real steps when we're helping someone who's going to take public transportation, to let them know how to do it, how much it costs, and where they're going to get on and off and that type of thing. So, but most of these systems, other than London, are quite easy to use. So it's and even London, once you get the hang of it, isn't that intimidating. So this would be something that you might want to try. And, let's say you were in Rome and you wanted to go to the airport, you could do that by public transportation for, 15 bucks or something. Oh, but if you were to take a cab, it might cost you like 80, $85. So you can experience substantial savings by doing it that way. So book hotels, trains, and tour excursions early. These, the earlier you book, generally speaking, the lower the cost. While the availability is high, cost is lower. So and consider, if you really prefer the all-inclusive approach where you have a set budget up front, consider traveling with a tour company, because your accommodation will be included, and most of your meals, breakfast certainly will almost always be included, and of course your transportation. So these are ways that you can save some money. And a few more ideas is, if you're paying by credit card, what we often see is, even in the States, I've seen this, where you have the option to pay in the local currency rather than Canadian dollars. And always opt for the local currency, because then you're paying in, whatever it is, Hungarian florins, and the exchange rate will be calculated in Canada by your own bank, as opposed to in the country where you're visiting, and because sometimes that exchange rate can be very poor. So better to get the exchange made by your own bank. Determine how much you're going to tip, and budget for that amount. And again, coach tour companies are very good at this, where they give you some guidelines as to how much you would tip the the guide that accompanies you on the tour, as well as how much you tip the driver. But that can be a substantial amount at the end of a week or 10 days. So um, you'll want to take that into account too. Take advantage of points programs. We were talking earlier about that, but Aeroplan, you can get travel miles when you fill up for gas or when you go to the liquor store or something like that. So these can all help to you to save money on the travel that you'd like to take. And keep an eye open for travel specials. So right now, for instance, it's in the cruising circle, it's called wave season. And so for the next couple months, they have incentives on that encourage you to book your trip now, even though you won't be taking it till later in the year or even till next year. And these are often time limited specials. So for instance, right now, I know there's one on for celebrity will have one for Alaska trip and that sort of thing. And otherwise, maybe it's Caribbean, and the next after that will be the Mediterranean type of thing. So, keep your eye open for specials and take advantage of them when you can. And now it's sort of going out of your comfort zone, and this is probably the hardest area to define and to come up with solutions for, because it does depend on the individual. But let's talk about how we could do that. It's really hard sometimes to figure out where you want to go. Sometimes you do have a specific place in mind. You've always wanted to go to Italy or whatever. But you can ask others where they've been, what they did there, whether they thought it was a great experience or whatever, and what they wouldn't do differently would also be a good question. Do research on emerging destinations to find places that are less expensive to go to. So for instance, because I specialize in Europe, I tend to try to find a new place to go and explore. Sort of moving more towards Eastern Europe now. And so last fall I went to Slovenia, and it was great. It was very inexpensive and an interesting place because it's surrounded by Italy to the north, Italy more like on the west, Austria, Budapest, and Croatia. So there's some elements of each of those nationalities influencing their culture, but to create a very distinctive culture. And it was such a beautiful place. It was the cleanest place I've ever been to in my life, and lovely architecture and so on. So it was a very good trip, and and extremely inexpensive. So it was really an interesting place to go. I would recommend it. And of course, you want to avoid peak times, which is typically during the summer months, to avoid the crowds and prices. And like last year, with the year of the Jubilee in Rome and Italy generally, the prices for hotel rooms were through the roof, and so it was bad all year, but particularly so during the summer when more people were able to travel. So you want to avoid those key times when you can. Heat is also a real issue in Europe in the summer. So consider going in the shoulder season, spring or fall. But I've noticed that the shoulders are getting bigger because it used to be when I first started in travel, we would always go in September. And thinking, okay, school's back on, fewer people and so on. And back then that there were fewer people traveling then, but others have gotten on to that as well. So September is a very popular month for travel. So now we're moving into October, and the weather is still good, and the prices are lower. So it makes sense if you can to postpone that. And if you want to time your visit to coincide with a noteworthy event in the destination, not to be particularly noteworthy. I mean, obviously, if it's the Olympics or something, then your parameters for your trip are defined. But sometimes it's fun to go to to Italy in the harvest season when the grapes are being harvested and the olives and so on. So, you know, there's a lot of festivals and so on around then. So it can be, you know, a particularly good time to visit. Just you know, just thought of getting from point A to point B may be intimidating as well. So you know, my advice is don't wing it. Have a clear plan for how you're going to get from here to there. I mean, the days of saying, "Oh, I'll just you know arrive at the airport in Budapest and then figure out how to get from here to there when I need to," type of thing. Those days are long gone. You know, we need to have a plan. And you know, that's important. And, you know, may involve taking public transportation and so on. So, um, um, but don't wing it, and then you'll feel more confident. You know, read the information on your plane or train ticket. That can also give you some answers to the questions that you're going to have in terms of, you know, what time should I get to the airport? How early should I get to the airport? You know, what is the size limitation for my and weight limitation for my luggage, that type of thing. And what's increasingly important is knowing the entry requirements for your destination. So we are seeing this throughout the world where even if you're not required to have a visa, you will have to do some paperwork in order to enter the country. And even down in the Caribbean, for instance, some of the islands have this, and it's certainly more pronounced now in Europe and the UK. So it's very important to know that. The other thing is even the validity period of your passport is important to know. Some countries in Europe do not require the passport to be valid for beyond your stay, but um, if you're going with a cruise line, the cruise line will often require a passport to be valid for 6 months beyond the end of your trip. So these are important things to know, and because they can actually prevent you from even getting on the plane in Toronto to get to where you need to go. Or you get to the starting point of your cruise and you find out you don't meet those entry requirements for the cruise line itself. So these are extremely important things because of, you're going to, unless you've gotten that insurance, all your money will go down the tubes. Um, and then have the phone numbers of hotels, tour companies, and travel agent if you've got one programmed into your cell phone. This can be your hotline to these particular places if you get lost. And keep your itinerary handy. So, I mean, sometimes when you're on a coach tour, for example, you're doing, 5 countries in 7 days or five places in 7 days. And you can lose track of where you are. And, it doesn't just happen to us old folks, but, it's important to have that itinerary handy so that you can remember where you are and what your obligations are for that day, what's expected of you. So you can be in the right place at the right time. And finally, there's safety in numbers. If you don't want to travel on your own or as a couple, there are plenty of options, and touch on some of these the guided coach tours and some for solo travelers in particular. A hybrid model. This is becoming more common as well. So, for instance, Air Canada Vacations offers um, packages to all over the world where you have transportation, of course, by Air Canada, accommodation, and some tours included. And the rest of the time you're on your own. They'll also give you the name of the contact information for a resource in the country who will be able to help you out if you get stuck somewhere. But this is sort of a nice compromise between going on a fully guided tour and doing your own thing. The cruises, of course, we've talked about. And certainly we do see a lot of groups going on cruises these days. But that they can be And groups can consist of friends or your, multi-generational families. We just see a lot of these, or even clubs. So, for instance, a few years ago, I did a transatlantic crossing, and not a lot to look at when you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So, this club, knitting club, had come on board, and so every morning they did this knitting. They had a room reserved for themselves, and then they had the rest of the day to themselves. And so this was a good way to pass the time when you're, on a journey like that. So, but sometimes, if you have some common interest, gardening or whatever, then it's a good reason to travel with a group. So I think those are the tips that I have for you. Um, you know, with age comes wisdom, and so all of us wise people, we can increase our understanding with some travel. And you'll learn about different people, cultures, history, and so on. And travel gives you the opportunity to expand your horizons. Most of us only touch the tip of the iceberg when it comes to traveling, and there, so many places to see and so little time and money to do it. But if you'd like to travel, I don't think you should. There are ways around any concerns that you have. Just make sure that um, you ask the right questions, you take some necessary precautions, and join some like-minded people who also enjoy traveling. And with that, thank you and say happy travels.